All right, let's dive in today. We're going to explore how to really maximize our impact, and we're going to use Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power as inspiration.
Sounds intense.
It is, in a way, but also really practical, which I love. Specifically, we're looking at Law 23, concentrate your forces.
Ooh, I like that. Concentrate your forces.
Yeah, and get this, the source material we're using is actually a script for a YouTube video on this law.
Oh, wow. Meta.
Right. So the core idea is that real power doesn't come from, spreading yourself thin. It's all about focusing your energy and your time and your resources on just one objective at a time.
Okay, yeah. I mean, at first glance, that sounds a little bit like, typical productivity advice.
Right.
But I think Green's getting at something a bit deeper here, something a lot more strategic, especially when we think about how to be influential and how to achieve some pretty ambitious goals.
That's what intrigues me about it. It makes me think about how, like, when I'm trying to juggle too many projects at once, I just end up feeling scattered and way less effective.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Is that kind of what Greene is talking about here?
Exactly. He uses this great analogy in the source material, the difference between scattered sunlight and focused sunlight. Scattered sunlight, sure, it creates a little warmth, but if you take that same sunlight and you focus it with a magnifying glass, well, you can start a fire.
Whoa, yeah, that's a powerful image.
Right. That's the kind of difference concentrated effort can make.
So it's like taking all of our efforts and like focusing them almost like a laser beam to make them more powerful.
Precisely. It's about maximizing impact. Like in physics, if you apply the same amount of force but over a smaller area, you create a ton more pressure, and that leads to a much bigger impact.
It's making me think about all those figures in history who achieved incredible things. Like, did they succeed because they understood this whole idea of concentrated force?
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
source material specifically mentions John D. Rockefeller as like a prime
Well,
example.
yeah, Standard Oil.
Exactly. He was laser focused on just completely dominating the oil industry.
I mean, I know monopolies aren't really looked upon too favorably these days,
Right.
but I can definitely see how that kind of single-mindedness could lead to a lot of
Oh,
success.
absolutely. I mean, there's no denying that some of Rockefeller's tactics were, um, say, ruthless. But the principle itself is neutral. It can be used for good or for bad. The point is, concentrating your efforts, it is highly effective.
That makes sense. It's kind of like a tool. It can be used for good or bad depending on the person using it, right?
Exactly.
What about someone who's like super brilliant, but they maybe don't achieve that ultimate success? Could that be a sign they didn't follow this law?
You're thinking like Robert Greene already. And a great example of this is actually Napoleon Bonaparte.
Oh, wow. Napoleon, he was like the military genius,
It
right?
was, absolutely.
Yeah.
But he made a fatal error that cost him dearly.
See, this is what I find so interesting, the idea that even someone brilliant can fail if they don't follow this principle.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So in 1812, Napoleon decided to invade Russia.
Ah, Russia, vast and unforgiving.
Exactly. And that's where his flaw was. He spread his forces way too thin across this massive landscape. It led to devastating losses for his army.
Wow. So it's a reminder that even if you have all the talent in the world, if you spread yourself too thin, it can lead to failure.
Exactly.
It makes me wonder, how can I apply this in my own life? Like, what does this actually look like day to day?
That's a great question, and that's where this law gets super practical. Think about how often you feel overwhelmed trying to learn like 10 new skills at the same time, or taking on too many projects,
Oh my gosh, all the time.
or trying to pursue like a million goals at once.
Literally me. I feel like I'm always juggling and not really excelling at anything.
You're not alone. It's a common challenge in today's world. The key here is recognizing that, when you spread yourself too thin, you often end up with mediocrity, not excellence.
So instead of trying to do everything, I should just pick one thing and go all in on that.
Not necessarily all in forever, but being strategic with your energy is super important. The source material actually mentions Steve Jobs when he returned to Apple in 1997.
Oh yeah, Steve Jobs. That's legendary. Wasn't Apple really struggling before he came back?
They were on the verge of collapse, actually.
Wow.
And Jobs recognized that a big problem was their lack of focus. They had way too many products.
Oh, so their energy was scattered.
Exactly.
So he came in and like did a major overhaul.
He did. He made this radical decision to cut back on the number of products they were making.
Wow.
And instead, he concentrated all their resources on just a few key items.
Like the iMac and the iPod.
Exactly. And then eventually, of course, the iPhone and the iPad.
And the rest, as they say, is history. I mean, Apple went from almost bankrupt to one of the most valuable companies.
That's the power of concentrating forces. In a world where we have limited resources, whether it's time, money, or energy, focusing on what truly matters is the key.
That's a powerful message. So, what I'm hearing is that if we want to make a real impact, we need to figure out what matters most and then really direct our energy there. It makes you think about what you might be doing that's actually holding you back.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into the next part of our conversation, which is distractions. The source material talks a lot about this, and it's so relevant in today's world.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many distractions. I mean, social media, emails, notifications, it's constant. It's hard to stay
It's a
focused.
constant battle. And the more we give in to these distractions, the less effective we become. It's like trying to build a house while constantly switching between tools and blueprints. It just wouldn't work.
That's a great analogy. So, how do we fight back? How do we, like, tune out all the noise and actually concentrate on what matters?
It takes discipline, for sure, but it is possible. The first step is to get crystal clear about your goals. And I mean really ruthless about prioritizing.
So, you're saying no is a big part of this.
You got it. Saying no to anything that doesn't align with that core objective is super important.
Oh man, saying no is hard.
I know, it can be a struggle. But it's about protecting your time and energy. It's about concentrating your forces where they're going to have the most impact.
I love that. It's like, it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart.
Exactly.
I'm curious though, is it all about individual effort or is there a way to like leverage other people's energy too, like collaboration and stuff?
Absolutely. The source material touches on that too. Just as you can concentrate your own resources, you can actually amplify your power by teaming up with others who share your focus.
Oh, that's interesting. It's almost like combining a bunch of magnifying glasses together.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to push a really heavy object. It's way easier with a group, right?
Teamwork makes the dream work.
That's the idea here. Whether it's business or relationships or any area where you can collaborate, alliances, they give you leverage.
Are there any like historical examples of this? I'm imagining some powerful alliance that led to a victory or something.
Oh, definitely. The script talks about Otto von Bismarck.
Bismarck, wasn't he like instrumental in unifying
He
Germany?
was. That was his big goal, to unify all those different German states. And he knew he couldn't do it alone.
So he formed alliances.
Exactly. He strategically built alliances with, key players, and then he concentrated all his efforts on removing any obstacles or distractions.
And he succeeded in unifying Germany.
He did. And you see this theme again and again. Whether it's focusing individually or forming strategic alliances, concentrated effort gets big results.
It's amazing how that pattern plays out in history. It does make me think, though, sometimes success takes time. How does patience fit into this whole picture?
That's a great point, and something the source material warns us about. Concentrating your forces doesn't always mean instant results.
That is kind of discouraging, though, right? I mean, we all love a good, quick win.
I agree, but patience is crucial for long-term success. It's like compound interest.
Oh.
It takes time to build momentum, but over time, the payoff can be huge.
So we need to stay focused and trust the process, even if we don't see results right away.
Exactly. Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's true. It reminds me of some businesses that, like, used to be at the top, but then kind of lost their way. Is that an example of not following this law?
It definitely can be. The source material actually talks about the decline of BlackBerry.
Oh, wow. BlackBerry.
Remember, they used to be huge in the mobile phone market, but they made the mistake of trying to compete in too many areas at once. Hardware, software, enterprise services, they were doing it all. Meanwhile, you had competitors like Apple and Samsung laser-focused on specific things, like user experience or innovation.
That's incredible. You'd think a company as big as BlackBerry would know better. It just shows how crucial this principle is.
It applies to everyone, no matter what you do or what your goals are.
This has been such a fascinating start to our deep dive. I feel like I'm already starting to get a handle on how to apply this law in my own life.
Me too. And we've only just scratched the surface. In the next part, we'll explore even more nuances and practical applications of concentrating your forces.
Awesome. I can't wait to dig in further. It's amazing how this idea of concentrating forces is like relevant to almost every part of life. I mean, we've talked about these powerful historical figures and business strategies, and even how this works with, personal growth. But what about those like everyday situations where you're just like struggling to make progress?
Absolutely. I mean, this law It's not just about these big, massive goals. It's equally valuable for navigating those smaller, everyday challenges.
Yeah, totally. It makes me think about things I've been putting off, like learning that new language I've always wanted to, or finally cleaning out that spare room that's basically become a black hole of like forgotten stuff,
Perfect examples. Those are perfect
like
examples.
real life applications.
The principle applies even in those smaller situations, right? Identify the objective, get rid of distractions, and concentrate your energy.
So instead of trying to use 5 different language learning apps, I should just pick one and go with it. And instead of like trying to clean my entire house in one weekend, I should just start with like one drawer or one corner of that room.
Exactly. It's about breaking those big, overwhelming things down into smaller, more manageable pieces,
Yeah.
right? And then applying that concentrated effort to each one, step by step.
So it's not about doing less. It's about being more intentional with like what you choose to focus on and actually, getting more done, but with the things that really matter.
Yeah, you hit it on the head, doing more with what matters. But even with all this in mind, sometimes it's still like, how do I put this into practice? Like, any tips for taking action?
Yeah, it's one thing to understand a concept, but like doing it is different. Are there any like practical techniques you found helpful?
Absolutely. One technique I use a lot myself, and I recommend to others, is time blocking.
Time blocking. I think I've heard of that. Is that where you like schedule specific blocks of time in your day for certain tasks?
Exactly, yeah. Being proactive,
Right.
planning your time, carving out those dedicated blocks to work on whatever that core objective is.
So instead of just hoping I'll find time, like in the chaos of the day, I actually schedule it in my calendar and make it like non-negotiable.
Exactly. And the great thing about time blocking is it gives you like a visual of how you're actually spending your time, which helps you see, where there might be conflicts or where you might be spreading yourself too thin.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because I can already see that being helpful for me because it would force me to like acknowledge that I can't fit 5 hours of work into a 3 hour window no matter how much I want to.
Exactly. Exactly. It brings that level of realism to your planning and helps you make those decisions about where to direct your energy.
I like that. So time blocking definitely makes sense. What other techniques can help with this whole focusing thing?
Another really effective method is the Pomodoro technique. Have you ever heard of that one?
Pomodoro, like the tomato?
Yes, exactly. It's named after those cute little kitchen timers that are shaped like tomatoes.
Oh, okay. That's kind of adorable. But how does a tomato timer help you concentrate?
It's all about focused work sprints. So the Pomodoro technique, you set a timer for 25 minutes, and during that time you work on just one task with complete concentration. Then you take a 5-minute break and you repeat.
So it's like interval training, but for your brain, like short bursts of intense focus and then these short little breaks.
Exactly. The key is during those 25-minute intervals, no distractions, no phone, no email, no social media.
Oh, so it's like you're creating this little concentration bubble where all you can do is focus on that one task. I feel like that would be really effective for me because I don't know about you, but I get distracted so easily.
It could be a game changer. You'd be surprised how much you can actually get done in those little focus sprints.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably way more efficient than just like sitting down for hours trying to work and getting constantly interrupted.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these are great techniques. Time blocking to plan my day, the Pomodoro technique to help me stay focused. I'm feeling like a concentration ninja over here.
I love it. That's the spirit. And remember, just like with any new skill, it takes practice and consistency.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up if you find yourself like slipping up or getting distracted sometimes.
Yeah, it's about progress, not perfection. Right.
Exactly. The most important thing is to be aware of your tendencies. Like, notice when your focus starts to drift and gently guide it back.
So it's about becoming more mindful of where our energy is going and then like making conscious choices about how we're spending our time.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. And the more you practice this, the more you're going to be able to accomplish things, you'll achieve your goals faster, and you'll even experience like a greater sense of fulfillment along the way.
I mean, it sounds almost too good to be true, but the examples we've talked about, whether it's like historical figures or even modern day things, it really shows that this principle works.
It does. It does. And it's not just about like external success. It's also about your inner world as well.
That's interesting because I've noticed that when I am able to focus on something, I actually feel calmer. Like I feel more present. What's the connection there, do you think?
I think it makes sense when you think about it. If you're constantly scattered, constantly distracted, your mind is just like this jumbled mess of thoughts and anxieties and to-do lists.
Oh my gosh, yes. Tell me about it. My brain sometimes feels like a web browser with like 50 tabs open.
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
But when you practice concentrating your forces, what happens is you actually bring a sense of calm and clarity to your mind.
So it's like closing all those unnecessary tabs and just focusing on the one that matters.
Exactly. And with that mental clarity, you can think more deeply, you solve problems better, you just make better decisions in every part of your life.
So it's not just a productivity strategy, it's almost like a path to a more peaceful and fulfilling life.
Absolutely, aligning your actions with your values, focusing on what truly matters to you, and getting rid of all that noise that's holding you back.
I love that. This is all making so much sense. I'm like so inspired to, take control of my schedule and my life. But there's one thing I still like struggle with. What about those times when you know what you should be focusing on, but you just like can't get started? Like there's a mental block there.
That feeling of being stuck, we've all been there. But a key thing to remember is that action creates momentum.
So even if I'm not feeling motivated, I should just like take a small step, even if it seems insignificant.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be this big monumental thing. Just start with something small, anything related to that goal.
So like if I'm trying to write a book, maybe I just commit to writing like one sentence a day.
Perfect example. Or if you're trying to learn a new language, maybe you just listen to one song in that language every day.
Just those tiny things that create a sense of progress.
Exactly. And as you start to experience those small wins, your motivation and your energy naturally increase.
It's like a snowball effect. The more you do, the easier it is to keep going.
Perfect analogy. So the next time you're feeling stuck, remember action creates momentum. Don't wait for that motivation to magically appear. Just take that step, even if it's a tiny one.
This is great. You've given me so much to think about. I'm feeling a surge of energy to tackle that like mountain of laundry that's been building up in my basement.
Yes, I love it. Just remember the principles we've talked about. Identify the objective, in this case, conquering Mount Washmore.
Okay, first step done. What's next?
Eliminate distractions. No checking social media while you're folding socks.
Noted.
And then concentrate your forces. Dedicate a block of time to doing laundry and commit to staying focused until it's done.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Wish me luck.
You got this. I have no doubt you'll conquer Mount Washmore.
This has been such an insightful deep dive already. I feel so much more focused and energized just from like talking about all this.
Me too. Me too. And there's even more to uncover. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll continue to explore all these nuances of concentrate your forces and how you can really use them to create even more impact in your life.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm ready to dive back in. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into Concentrate Your Forces.
Yeah.
From like historical figures to practical tips, it's incredible how much this one principle from Robert Greene can really apply to so many different parts of life.
Yeah, it really highlights the power of focus.
Yeah.
And it's something that can benefit everybody, no matter what their goals are.
As we've been talking about this, there's one thing that keeps coming back to me, something that personally I struggle with, and that's the whole like power of saying no.
Ooh, that's a good one. Saying no is definitely crucial for protecting your energy and focusing on what really matters. But it's a skill that doesn't always come easily.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm such a people pleaser. Saying no often feels so uncomfortable, almost like, I don't know, like I'm being rude or selfish or something.
Yeah, I get that. But I think it's important to remember that saying no is not about being unkind. It's about setting healthy boundaries and honoring your own commitments, too.
So it's more like an act of self-respect, not selfishness.
Exactly. Every time you say yes to something,
Yeah.
you're saying no to something else. And if you're always saying yes to every request, every invitation, you end up spreading yourself too thin and your impact gets, diluted.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like I'm actually letting myself down by not being more careful with my yeses.
Right. When you learn to say no strategically, you're reclaiming your time and energy. And that allows you to focus on those things that are really important to you.
Okay, that makes sense. But like, how do you actually get better at saying no without feeling guilty or, hurting other people's feelings?
Well, one thing to remember is you don't always owe anyone a long explanation.
Really? I always feel like I have to have this like really good reason to say no.
That's a common trap. Sometimes a simple, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I'm not able to commit to that right now is enough.
Okay, so just keep it short and sweet and to the point.
Exactly.
Got it. And what if someone like keeps pushing or tries to make me feel guilty? What do you do then?
In those cases, it's important to be assertive. Just reiterate your no.
Hmm.
You have the right to protect your time and energy, and it's okay to stand your ground.
This is actually really empowering. I'm starting to see saying no less as a negative thing and more as like a tool to help me achieve my goals.
Exactly. It's about creating space in your life for the things that really matter to you, and it's definitely a key part of concentrating your forces.
It's funny because thinking about this now, I realize I often take on too many projects at work simply because, I don't know, I just don't want to disappoint anyone. But then I end up feeling super overwhelmed and stressed. Maybe saying no more often would actually make me a better employee in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. By setting those boundaries and focusing on fewer things, you might find that you produce better work and are more effective overall.
This whole conversation has been such a light bulb moment for me. It feels like I'm finally starting to understand what it really means to concentrate my forces.
That's great to hear. And remember, it's a journey. Just keep practicing and be patient with yourself.
Progress, not perfection, right? Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with this. What's one area of your life where you've been spreading yourself too thin? What would happen if you took this principle, this idea of concentrating your forces, and applied it to that area? What amazing things could you achieve if you truly focused your energy and eliminated all those distractions? It's a question worth thinking about, and just remember, you have the power to create a more focused and fulfilling life. It all starts with choosing to concentrate your forces on what truly matters. That's it for our deep dive into Robert Greene's Concentrate Your Forces. We hope you found it insightful. Until next time, stay focused, keep reaching for your goals, and thanks for joining us.